Good morning. This is Sunday, the 12th of April, and this is my second bulletin of the day, and this one will relate to the issues around testing. Before I begin, in the first video I've just made on my personal observations, I had omitted to say that, very interestingly, this has been observed by colleagues up and down the country. Those people that move into week 2 of the illness, this kind of, if you like, viral induced pneumonitis, their spouses seem to be largely asymptomatic. And of course, I anticipated that those individuals that I saw, 10 days ago, let's say, that when they were moving into week 2 of illness, it was just inevitable that the husband or wife or partner would become similarly affected. And it was very, very difficult because they had to make kind of, if you like, tricky decisions about themselves and how they would care for the person that was clearly unwell. Now, again, this probably points out that this isn't just about infectivity of virus, and actually what we are seeing in many, many cases, even in those people that require the severest of intervention, ventilation, that very often the person that looks after that person normally is either unaffected or very mildly affected, if at all. And I would like to do more work on that and maybe look at a simple questionnaire that we can pass around ICU. It may well be that someone else has already thought of that, but certainly this again would underpin this hypothesis that the pneumonitis in week 2 isn't about massive viral replication. That's already happened. This is about the host response to the virus, and that these people coughing into day 8, day 9, day 10, they are not shedding virus. They are coughing because their lungs are inflamed by the virus from the week before. Anyway, move on to testing. Big subject. I'll try and make it short. I do have some personal thoughts about that, given the donations we've had to date and our ability to interact with Randox laboratories in Northern Ireland. And we have 2 Vivalytic devices. The second purchase order has been held back in the hope that they will find me what are called Copp tubes. Now, it's become a political football testing, and it's even in this very well-written piece in the British Medical Journal this weekend, The Scandals of COVID-19. The government, of course, wants to offer 100,000 tests per day by the end of the month, and this particular person has said that that is frankly delusional. Now, he may or may not be right, but the issue is not a political one. There is a political will, and there is a determination to offer more testing. We know that countries that test have done so much better. The issue is about a global shortage of reagents, and Mr. Hancock did make some oblique reference to this last week, and I was waiting for that because I knew that this was the case, and I'm not sure that we've been properly informed. You could take all the swabs in the world from a nose and a throat from a person with COVID-19, but unless you have a specific liquid that you put the swab inside, now that liquid is often called a lysis tube, or in the case of the tests that we'll be doing, they're called ENAT tubes, extractable nuclear antigen. So that's a liquid that sucks out all the RNA and DNA from that swab and, if you like, suspends it in the liquid. And then the technician can draw up a specific amount of that liquid and insert that onto a testing cassette, and then we get a result. Now, the main manufacturer of ENAT tubes in the Western world to date has been Copp, who are based in Northern Italy. Now, I don't need to explain why they may have been struggling to meet demand, but I did speak to Copp on Wednesday of last week, and they are doing their very best. They have their production lines going, but there is a worldwide shortage of a particular component of these ENAT tubes, that's something that goes into the liquid, and that's called guanidine thiocyanate. And they would love to make many hundreds of thousands of more tubes, but simply cannot do that at the moment because there is a worldwide shortage. And it's all compounded by the fact that the last people to the party, if you like, the Americans, who are now testing, and as I implied in my previous bulletin 2 weeks ago, all eyes are facing west. Those reagents, those facilities that can be used are flying across the Atlantic away from us, and we have to take our place in the queue. So testing is not a political thing, and individual parties in the UK shouldn't be fighting or trying to ambush each other about this. This is not about political will. This is about supply and demand and global shortages of key ingredients in reagents that allow us to identify those people who are COVID positive. And because many other countries have been so prolific with their testing, we just simply run out of the key ingredients. And clearly that is the issue that needs to be addressed here. So that, if you like, is the test to identify an index case. And these are the key aspects of that. The other kind of testing that's important, and again has been referenced in the press, is so-called antibody testing. Now, obviously, as most people are aware, when you have a viral infection, the immune system recognizes that virus, and then usually around a week later will produce some temporary antibodies called IgM, M for mother. IgM antibodies are produced about a week later, and that's one of the difficulties with serological tests, is that we have to wait 7 days to get that response. So it's not that useful in terms of diagnosing an index case because of that delay. And then around 3 or 4 weeks after the initial illness, the body will produce IgG, G for golf, IgG antibodies, and these are the antibodies that, generally speaking, will then last a lifetime. And they are there, they're part of your immune surveillance, and their job in the future is to recognize that particular antigen as soon as it enters the body and to neutralize it. So that's what antibody testing is about. Now again, this has become political and it's become fraught, and people are scared to make a decision, and it's highly frustrating. We know that Spain purchased millions of kits from what turns out to be a Chinese supplier who was not approved by the actual Chinese government. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I can imagine anyone would say that anyway. But many millions of euros were wasted, and these test kits were of no value. And in my personal opinion, I think fear has simply escalated to the point of there being an inability to choose or to make up one's mind. We do have CE approved kits available in Europe, and countries such as Germany and Holland have used these extensively. Now, we were very kindly donated some money to allow a sample purchase of 50 Dutch serological kits, and over this past while the emphasis has been upon identifying GPs who have already or were certainly already had COVID but didn't get access to diagnostic testing, but are having to keep self-isolating every time they get a fever or cough, which GPs get, and most of the time it's of a trivial nature. And disrupting your surgery for a week is having, I don't need to say what the effect of that is. It's very significant, as it would be for me, and having to cancel everything. So I'm very pleased to say that we've been testing, most of these tests have been done on NHS medical practitioners and some other hospital doctors here in the Edinburgh area. We have 50 kits, there are about 10 left. If you like, we're trying to test the test kits. So I'm also interested in testing people who've previously tested COVID positive, and to test them 4 weeks later to see that they've got this good IgG response, which I am pleased to say I do have, and hopefully that lasts a lifetime. we've been in a very privileged position because one of my own patients who was hospitalised, I was given permission last weekend to go into the hospital with this Dutch kit and test that individual. Now, the patient's own COVID nasal and throat swabs were of course negative, as they would be well down into week 2. The virus is gone, but the hospital are obliged to do the testing, and they will test those people who are unwell enough to be in the hospital. So the serological kit was used, just literally a thumb prick of blood, and lo and behold, there it was, an IgM band. So it was a very useful way of benchmarking that particular test. We've had the opportunity to go back and test that person again now that they are back home, and the result from last week on, I think, Wednesday was that we could see both an IgM and an IgG band, just the early IgG band, which, if you like, is again a very good validation of that test. What we anticipate is in 2 weeks' time, with one kit that I'm keeping for that purpose, is that we can show that there is just an IgG band on its own, so that that person, if you like, over 3 kits, has shown exactly what you would anticipate if you had a kit that was measuring the right thing. Now, I have no shares, not knowingly, I don't think I've got any shares left anyway, in this company. I have no conflict of interest. Yeah, my partner's Dutch, so it was quite nice it was from Holland, but that's it. It wouldn't have mattered whether it was from Holland or Germany or another European country. It was CE marked, and all I was trying to do was to do a bit of Boy Scout field study, feed that back into the Glasgow University hub, who are doing an assessment of available serological tests, feed it back into the national COVID hub, and obviously make the results available on the internet, and really just to give that information to people to help them in their own decision making. In terms of me going back and buying kits, it's just not feasible. These manufacturers are selling large volumes to other countries' governments in multiples of thousands, and the smallest order I can commercially put in would be a 500, a minimum order of 500, and let's say €100 a time. I just cannot do that, just can't do it. But other people can, and governments and institutions can make those decisions. And all I'm aware to this date is that they've added this Dutch-Swiss collaborative kit to the ones that they are currently looking at. My own concern is that certainly in the press we've seen the understandable calls for, we're British, we've got a fantastic biotech community, and yes we do, but if they want to start from scratch and produce a commercially available kit, and yes it may well turn out to be the best kit, that's not going to happen for a long time. It could be months and months before we have we could have the best test kit in the world, serologically speaking, but we need it now. And we need it now with the other testing to allow us to relax the structures that we have in place to socially isolate, so that people can start to move more freely. We can only allow people to move more freely when we can identify those people who are new index cases with no throat swabs, be able to test them reliably, and to identify those people who've already got memory antibodies to COVID, because we know that they are not a problem. They can get on with their lives. Okay, I think I will stop there with one final caveat. Again, I'm not a political person, but please don't make testing a political issue. This is about logistics, and it's a time to cooperate, not to beat the brains out of each other. We need to get the best of them and put them together in a positive way. Thank you.